Hi guys, I'm Dan, this is Kai. We are the directors at Crescent Mortgages, and today we're going to be answering in detail a very common question. What's the difference between a mortgage valuation and a survey?
Thanks, I'll actually...
No, we started. Guys, we know mortgages are boring, and this valuation survey, it is so boring, isn't it? If you've been doing your research this evening on YouTube, learning about mortgages, and you've got down to the valuations, fair play to you. We feel the same just talking about it all day, don't we? But it's important, and it's an important job, and it's an important part of everyone's life to get the mortgage. So we're going to try and make it interesting as we can, but ultimately we want to give you useful and accurate information. That's probably why you're here. The two types of valuation, there's a lot of confusion. The terminology kind of can be used for both, but essentially we've got mortgage valuation and we've got a survey, and they are different things, aren't they?
Yeah.
Very quick summary, and then we're going to get into each of them individually and how they'll impact you. The mortgage valuation is the mandatory part of the mortgage process, along with other checks, to get your mortgage agreed. The lender has to do a mortgage valuation on the property. We'll come to a bit more information in a second. The second one is a survey. It's not mandatory. No. It's an additional form of valuation known as a survey that you can carry out on a property. Generally, if you're purchasing a property, you don't have to get it done, but you might choose to, again, for the reasons that we're going to outline in a second. Before we jump into it, just to remind you that we are not YouTubers, are we? Feels like we are sometimes, but we're not.
One day.
So we're not there yet. We are mortgage brokers. We're qualified mortgage brokers. So if you need assistance with your mortgage, remortgage or purchase, or you just want to have an initial consultation, you can give us a call, send us an email, head over to the website, or leave a question in the comments and we will do our best to come back to you. Starting with the mortgage valuation. So let's just go through some of the key points.
Okay.
Do you want to jump in now?
All right, yeah, fine.
Go for it.
Yeah. Mandatory.
Shoot.
Already covered that. So the bank will have to, or building society, will have to do a valuation to make sure that the property value stacks up with the price that you agreed for it. If it's worth less, then that damages your mortgage potentially, because they need to know that if they sell the property, if you don't pay your mortgage, that they can get their mortgage amount back. And if it's worth a lot less than you're actually paying for it,
you've got less equity, puts them at risk. We won't get into all of the details, but yeah, so it is important that you're paying a fair value, isn't it?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I can see you getting a
a
little
little bit.
Yeah.
It's because I haven't had time to speak.
We should mention as well, whether you're purchasing a property or remortgaging a property, the new lender will need to do a valuation. When you purchase a property, we rarely see down valuations, do we?
True.
We sometimes do, but generally, a property is worth what you're willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
So when you're buying, we don't see them that often, but if there is a down valuation, it can impact your mortgage. You may need to come up with a bigger deposit, or you may have to pick a higher interest rate from a higher loan to value, depending on how much you were putting down in the first place. Your broker will talk you through those options. We see down valuations more common with remortgages.
Yeah.
The reason being that when you remortgage, you basically have to guess what your property value is. It's important that you give a value, because they need to work out how much equity you've got and what your loan to value is and what interest rate you're eligible for. But because you're guessing, you might give an optimistic estimate of the property value. The lender will do their own check, and again, if they come back and think, no, we don't agree with you, following the valuation, the lender will go on the valuation figure and not your guess, which can again impact your mortgage. Final couple of points on the mortgage valuation. With most lenders, it's free. So you normally don't have to pay for the mortgage valuation. If you do, it's normally not too expensive, maybe £100 tops with a couple of lenders.
Purchases, isn't it, there primarily?
Yeah, generally with a remortgage, actually, they are almost always free. And the other thing is, there are subcategories of mortgage valuation, just to overcomplicate or complicate it further. So we have no choice over this. The lender will choose which one they're going to do as part of the mortgage assessment. So this basic valuation, you're really keen to do this.
Yeah, no, you go for it. I'm listening.
So they can either do a physical valuation where they will
see it.
Is that what I do to you? They'll do a physical valuation where they actually go and look at the property. They'll send a surveyor to the property. They'll need to call you to book a date to go and have a look around. Very brief, but they will have a look. There's a drive-by valuation where
they'll drive Past the property.
So they won't go and look in, but they will just have a little look from the street. So they don't even necessarily need to make you aware of that, but they might do a drive-by or what's called a desktop valuation, which is
Well, they look on the computer.
computer. So they'll basically just do a little bit of research online, looking at kind of index valuations, market growth in the area. So they won't actually physically look at the property. So they won't unearth any potential structural issues. They'll take that risk that they're not going to do that, but they will confirm online that they think that you've given a fair value there. So they either do a physical, a drive-by, or a desktop valuation. We've got no control, but they're going to do one of those. Yeah. Do you think we're dragging this out a little bit?
I think it's all right.
Pick up the
Go
pace.
for it. What's the last point?
Okay, was that the last point?
No, there's one more.
Sorry guys, we can't remember it all. Essentially, with a mortgage valuation, once the surveyor has given the lender the value, the lender will go on that value, regardless of whether you think it's unfair. We do have a lot of clients that think they've come back way lower than the realistic price. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, but the lender is going to go on the value that is given by the surveyor. Yeah. So rarely, if ever, have we seen an appeal successful.
Yeah, possible, but
probably wasting your time.
One in thousands.
That's the mortgage valuation. Now over to a survey.
Right, yeah.
Do you want to start here?
Non-mandatory.
Not mandatory, yeah. Elaborate.
Yeah, you don't have to have one. As Dan said near the start, you choose. You choose to have one. So now it's in your interest. If you want a bit more security.
Just quickly, generally you would only do it on a purchase.
Yes, remortgages for this
you
one.
remortgage, you already own the property,
you
probably don't need to get someone to look at the property in more detail. It's the idea is when you're buying a property, you might choose to do a survey, carry on.
Thank you. So now you are trying to make sure that the property is okay for you. The bank's already checked it normally. You normally want the bank to do their check first, just to make sure they don't unearth any issues in their own free check.
You don't have to do it like that.
No, but generally recommended because on a survey like this, on a private survey, you're going to pay for it. It could be £500, it could be £1,000. It varies a lot, in all honesty, on prices, depending on the levels of survey and quality of survey, price of property, loads of different things. But given that the mortgage lender is generally free, let them do the first check and then generally do yours after.
The reason being is that, I think you've kind of touched on it, but just to really spell it out for you, if you pay £1,000 for a private survey before your mortgage has been agreed, then you could pay the £1,000, they'll complete the survey, all looks great. But if for one reason or another your mortgage is then declined, either you're declined because of affordability, or the property's declined because the lender isn't happy with the valuation that they've done, you may not be able to proceed with that mortgage and that property, but you're £1,000 out of pocket on the survey. So that's why you don't have to do it this way, but generally try and get your mortgage agreed first, so you've at least got your mortgage offer, and that can give you the confidence to then go and pay for additional surveys and checks and costs and whatever you want to do.
I mean, you love a category. There are 3 categories here.
So again, we put the survey into 3 subcategories as well.
Yeah.
The first one is generally the most basic private survey you would have done as a home buyer's report. They're not looking at the property in a huge amount of depth. They are acting on your behalf. You will have to pay for it. They often work with kind of a traffic light system, don't they? So they'll just look at the brickwork, damp, timber, whatever else, and they'll kind of have a green, amber, or red. So they're not going to diagnose any issues, but they might highlight certain bits and pieces that you might want to get looked at in a bit more detail, which can be a bit frustrating sometimes because it's not always giving you a huge amount of info, but can highlight certain issues. One up from that is a full structural survey where they will look at the entire property in detail. They should pick up any structural or kind of significant issues. That is going to be obviously more expensive than the home buyers. And then I guess the third subcategory, which could be subcategorized even further, is a kind of a private inspection on a
specialist report.
Sorry, specialist report. So let's say you've looked at the property and that the chimney looks a bit questionable, or there's particular damp. You could send out a specialist to do a damp and timber check, or look at the chimney stack,
or a roof report.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever.
But that's quite rare that you do that, unless you can physically see that there's something that you have concerns about, or very occasionally the mortgage valuation, the mandatory valuation, the valuer will look at the property and they might pick up something that they're slightly concerned about. This doesn't happen that often, but it does sometimes happen.
It does happen a bit.
And then they will recommend that they're not going to agree the mortgage until you've got...
At this hour?
A few moments later.
Sorry, where were we? So if the mortgage valuation picks up a potential issue that they've seen in the property, they can request that you have to source and pay for a specialist survey or specialist report before they agree the mortgage. So the valuer might see there's an issue with the chimney and they might advise you to go and pay and organise a specialist chimney inspection before they can agree the mortgage. So that's quite rare, but that does happen.
Or the home buyer's report, you know, if it pulls up lots of ambers or reds telling you that you may need to look into this again, it's quite commonplace for a specialist report to then be done afterwards.
Yeah, I guess the final couple of things. So we look at private survey. Not everyone gets them done, private surveys. You don't have to, but it is your peace of mind, because bear in mind, as we touched on, the mortgage valuation, that offers you no cover whatsoever. That is purely done for the mortgage lender to agree the mortgage. If you organise a private survey, then it's kind of an insurance policy for you. Ultimately, you are taking on this property, you're taking on the risk, the responsibility of owning this property, and if there are some major structural issues with the property once you've purchased it, that's your problem. If it's going to cost 20 grand to rebuild a part of the property, or there's other issues which are going to cause you problems, that is your problem essentially. So if you can get a survey done beforehand that picks something that up, one, it could prevent you from buying the property, if it wasn't right, or you could potentially use it to negotiate the price, or at least you know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah.
But they do come at an extra cost, don't they?
Yeah. And I just think you probably touched on there, because it's on your behalf and it is a bit more specialist, there is recourse if they get it wrong.
Yeah.
Isn't there? So if they say, no, the roof is absolutely fine, this is full structural survey, let's say, the roof's absolutely fine.
Good point.
You move in and straight away the roof's caving in on itself.
It's not funny.
It's not, no, it's really not ideal. But if you've had a full building survey done or a full structural done, and they said the roof is absolutely fine, and they should have spotted that.
That could be on them.
There is some comeback there, so you might be able to get some costs back, you might be able to get various things.
Or just sue them
to help that. Yeah, all those sorts of things really.
But we don't give legal advice, so don't
no, definitely
take that
don't. But yeah, it gives you some insurance.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's gone on long enough. So again, hopefully that helps. If you have any questions or you want to discuss your own specific mortgage with us, get in touch. We can have an initial consultation with you. We hope that was helpful, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.